Hello, Red Mail Energy listeners. This is Mikhail, and I have a very exciting guest that I cannot wait to dive into so many fun topics with. Jennifer spent 2 decades as an operations leader in healthcare, directing successful teams in compliance, service, sales, and training. Following a deeply profound shift that has led to a journey of introspection and healing, Jennifer earned certification as a spirituality and life coach and began coaching others experiencing the jolting rawness of consciousness. With more than 500,000 followers on TikTok, she creates thought-provoking and perspective-bending content daily that is consumed by millions across social media platforms worldwide. So welcome to the podcast, Jennifer.
Thanks so much, Mikhail. I'm excited to be joining you today.
Yes, I am so excited too. I'd love to kind of start at the beginning. I mean, walk me through where your corporate journey took a turn and then what caused you to kind of find this niche that now has seemed to just bring you so much healing and connection and community. And yeah, what kind of got you here?
Yeah. Well, I sort of spent a lifetime grappling with my spiritual gifts, if you will, grappling in the sense that I tried to stifle them. I never really understood them. And I didn't really have a family that embraced them. They weren't overtly religious, but we grew up in the Catholic Church. And so anything outside of those teachings was really, foreign to them, and it scared them. So essentially, I didn't really have a ton of support to understand and dive into what I was really experiencing.
Yeah.
So I stifled it for a long, long time, and I went through my life. I went to school, and I joined corporate, and I did all the things that I was supposed to do, but I always felt an emptiness, a void inside that I was missing something. So many people do. But so life progressed. I went through the paces. I had my kids. I was married. I had the house. I had a very successful corporate career. And I had gone through weight loss surgery. And so understanding one of the side effects was transfer addiction. And so I very shockingly developed a transfer addiction to alcohol.
Okay.
And I spent about 5 years sort of digesting the fact that it was an issue in my life. And then it all kind of cataclysmically came together. I hit my rock bottom, and I didn't have my awakening right away. I switched career paths, and I found a new relationship. And then the pandemic hit. And I went and I saw a psychic actually for the very first time. One of my lifelong best friends had lost her daughter. And so I booked us a session with a psychic. It was the very first one I'd ever done. And I left that session feeling very, very weird. To be, for lack of a better word, I felt very out of sorts. Nothing really resonated too much while I was meeting with the psychic. But when I came home, everything in my reality sort of shifted, and things sort of came into perspectives that I had never thought before. And that led me on a path of the last 4 to 5 years of just introspection, trying to figure it out all on my own. It is a very, very solo journey. While everybody's journey looks similar, it's organically going to be different. So I left corporate and I dove into this social media venture that I've been on now for a few years, and I'm trying to help others experiencing what I've been through, because there's really, there's not a lot of community out there for it.
Yeah, that resonates so much. I mean, that's my whole goal in creating this community, is not only to provide a community for my fellow women and people that I connect with, but I think it's because it's something I've so desperately needed for so long. And I hear that echoed in your same sentiment, that sometimes we set out to create what we've actually always needed ourselves. And along the way, we're able to meet so many people that are on similar paths, or maybe they're a little bit ahead or a little bit behind of where we are. And it's so important to create enough space at the table for everyone, no matter where they're at in that journey, because sometimes one conversation is the difference between staying asleep or having that awakening. And it sounds like that psychic experience, while maybe it wasn't, here's every answer in a crystal ball, it kind of just shifted your perspective to look at your 3D world a little bit differently than you'd been seeing it. And that catalyst can make such a gigantic difference. So it's really cool to hear that it wasn't something that's unattainable for anyone listening. It really is like making the choice to see things through a different lens, or allow your consciousness to expand a little bit.
it's really just diving into what mindfulness really is. There's so much talk, manifestation, gratitude, mindfulness. For the last 2 decades, that's been a trend, right? But if you really think about what being mindful is, it allows you to find that. And that was really all it took for me, was that slight shift. And that's what I tried to teach to others. It could be minuscule, what I'm saying. It could be a huge, people that consume my content, I hear from them all the time that, what may have caused such a huge resonance in you, people laugh at and unfollow me for. And that was something as part of my evolution in this journey that I had to thicken my skin about too, because it's just understanding every one of us is on a different stage of this journey. Some are very, very early on where they can't correlate with anything that I speak about. And then there's other people that are so far advanced than I am, and I learn from them. So it's a beautiful dance. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, social media is such a vicious beast that has so much opportunity for connection, but simultaneously, I'll always remind myself, if I'm for everyone, I'm actually for no one. And so I have to find that community, because there are always going to be people that are going to have something to say. And even for me, more recently, stepping out into this entrepreneurial venture, the amount of questions I get that I can't believe the audacity. Like, so how are you going to make money and pay your mortgage? I'm like, unless I'm coming to you and knocking on your door and asking you for money, mind your own. Like, this is not even something, but again, it's this major projection. And I also remember that, like, when people are hiding behind their keyboards, there is often such a projection happening. And all I can do is try to like breathe some light toward that and then move on, because it's not worth sinking me down into a lower vibration because some person in their basement is telling me that they think what I'm saying is dumb or whatever. But I mean, it still is requiring of that thicker skin, because we all have feelings. And when we're passionate about something, the last thing we want is someone to kind of knock it. So,
and understanding, like you said, that there's projection happening there. I mean, 99.999% of it is projection. It's all how they feel on the inside. And when you kind of frame up every single mindful moment like that, it really makes sense, and you can allow it to just be released from your energy space.
Definitely. So once you kind of exited the corporate world, what were those first few, months, maybe even that first year, like in creating content, finding that niche? Did you struggle with any sort of imposter syndrome, or like, here in this corporate world, I've got a SOP that tells me everything to do, and now I'm in this entrepreneurial creator space where I'm just kind of winging it some of the times? I mean, what was that initial time like?
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of content creation, it's all I think most of us are self-taught, because it was, and somebody said to me recently, well, social media has been around forever. I said, but not like this. This is all, we were talking in context to the election and how powerful social media is in general to society today, but it really has changed the landscape in the last 4 years. It just has. TikTok alone. Every other platform is trying to scramble and keep up with TikTok. So, yeah, there was definitely an evolution in my creative space. And what I was finding along the way was that it was becoming a modality to heal for me. Having a voice for the first time in a way that felt sort of anonymous, even though that sounds kind of moron, but it really, TikTok is huge. There's billions, right, of people on it. And so I knew that nobody in my personal life was consuming what I was putting out in this space. And it was true. So I felt very free to share my voice for the first time ever. But when I sidestepped out of corporate, I obviously had to continue to work a little bit. So I took my skills and transferred them into recruiting. And that sort of was the path that I took next to really kind of hone in on what I wanted to do. And it gave me the opportunity to sort of marry these two worlds. I really did live with imposter syndrome for a long, long time once I started creating and speaking to this whole community, but then going back out to my normal life every day, pretending again that I'm just, whatever you want to call me, Jen. And I knew that I wasn't anymore. And not because of the fame and notoriety, but because of the shift inside of myself. And so it was only this year that I actually completely left my professional, career path that I had been on. and really have been able to kind of merge my two worlds, and it's liberating and freeing and wonderful, and it's opened energy blocks and channels that I've had blocked for so long. So it's definitely been a very therapeutic process for me.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's often, I mean, like the healer is also being healed. It sounds like, having some of this information and knowing that the more we know, the more we realize we don't know anything. I mean, that's wisdom, right? The more wise you become, the more you realize there are so many other perspectives and so many other people on these different paths. So to share your experience is so healing to so many. It's like what is the quote? Like your life story or becomes someone else's survival guide. Like what you've been through becomes what somebody else uses in order to know I could get through that too. But then to also be able to create community and feel like your voice is being received in a way it hasn't, but also giving you grace and space to keep healing too is just a really cool aspect of social media that I think oftentimes we just look at some of the negative, or we get sucked into these rabbit holes of, doom scrolling or all these very niche videos and whatever. But there is so much connective power within it. And it's just kind of choosing what you're consuming and being intentional about that, because a lot of times it feels kind of autopilot to people, but there really is a lot of amazing information out there and ability to just feel not so alone in a world where I don't think people have ever felt
So
more
connected.
alone than we do right now. Yeah.
Yes. No, I know the need for connection has never been so great.
Yeah.
Sure. And I think that that's really the healing element too, comes from sharing your own personal journey. Because for me, I can speak from my own perspective, we go through life where we think that all of these horrible things that happen to us and that we've had to live through are, just happening to us. And because we don't talk about it with anybody. So being able and free to share your experiences, and then to have people reciprocate and not only share theirs, but then also say, because of hearing your story, I was able to do X, Y, and Z. And so, that sort of is how it all transcended for me, and really wanting to teach others how to do this too, because it's healing not only for yourself, but that, cascades out into the world, and that light really allows others to share their own voice.
Yeah. Yeah. So beyond the kind of maybe activation of your throat chakra, finding that voice, trusting that voice, what are some of the other areas that this community and having this platform have kind of allowed you to heal, or maybe areas in which you have changed your perspective or been able to kind of view the world a little bit differently throughout this journey?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely given all of us that are, consuming content on social media, it's given us such a different view and vantage point to others in the world. So, it definitely allows me to, I mean, I'm empathic, as most of us really are, but I tend to feel before I think all the time. And ironically, it's allowed me to sort of put up barriers that I never really knew how to do before, because you're being fed so much emotion and storylines and just so much coming at you on social media. It's really allowed me to almost sort of put up those barriers and blocks and practice that. And I've actually taught some of my clients that as well, using social media in that way as well, to sort of help you balance your own emotions from everybody else's.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, setting energetic boundaries, and it starts with ourselves. I think that often if we don't have firm boundaries within ourselves, which it's often these habitual things we create that we don't even realize. Our alarm goes off and we're already on TikTok within 4 seconds of waking up, or whatever those things may be, that we really have to be ready to get honest with ourselves in order to make some of those changes. But if we don't hold those boundaries within ourselves, how in the world are we going to expect that we're going to hold boundaries with the people around us that maybe are kind of walking all over us or not respecting certain wishes that we have? And that's been something personally that I've really worked on lately, is getting really honest with myself about some of the areas that I need to hold boundaries and hold myself accountable within those. And then, like, man, if you can face your own self in the mirror and set those boundaries, it gets a lot easier with people around you, when we realize that, the only people that are really benefiting from those boundaries not being there are the ones that are abusing us in that sense. They're benefiting from it in some way. So What are some of the practices that either you've worked personally or with your clients on setting some of those, like either social media or energetic boundaries?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my own personal healthy boundaries that I've worked to achieve have been familial, and most of my clients also. But it's just like you said, it's recognizing that if you're not going to kind of, put your foot down for yourself, no one else is. I love Mel Robbins, and I love her quote, "No one's coming." And no one's coming. No one's going to come for us as grown adults. We have to put those steps and practices into place to not only create, the mental health that we need to have a successful life, but to, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought completely. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, it happens. Yeah. I think it's if we don't start often with the patterns that we were raised within, which are those family kind of ties. And again, there's so much opportunity for growth and to learn within that, but there's a lot of pain there too. No one can trigger us the way that our parents or our close family can. And oftentimes a look from a parent can trigger us more than a 30-minute segment from somebody that may have a complete different belief system from us, but there's something so tied in so many ways with our families. And that's often then the most difficult boundaries to set, because we have these internal patterns of wanting to please or wanting them to be proud of us and all these things that just can be very difficult to wrestle with. But again, starts with ourselves, and then the people closest to us will respect that, eventually in some capacity. And also we get to determine what behaviors and situations we'll tolerate and we won't. And for me, it used to feel so scary because a lot of times it felt like boundaries, say like with a parent, meant like going head to head and saying like, you will not treat me like this and la, la, la. And instead I'm like, oh no, I just get to get up and leave that situation. And that to me is so much less confrontational, but feels good because I just choose what space I will exist within. And if I get to a point where my heart's beating really fast and I start to get that trauma headache that'll kind of come in and my whole body is inviting me to dissociate, I may just say, oh, time for me to go. It's been great to see you guys. See you, and it's such a
controlling your reaction.
yeah.
Exactly. And really, for myself, it's recognizing that dance that we have with our family members, whether it be your parents or your siblings. Usually it's your parents, right? And for me, it's always been my parents, but you start to recognize those triggers that rise within you when they say those things or give you that look. And it's identifying the feeling and then letting it go before you react. And that has been a lifelong struggle that I've only just achieved in my 40s, truthfully. And it's not foolproof. It's not foolproof. Nobody can trigger you like your parents or your family. It's not foolproof. But when you're aware of it, and you set yourself up for those visits and conversations in advance, you can kind of mentally prepare yourself to put up those blocks.
Yeah. Awareness is so powerful. And something I've found often goes hand in hand with that is the moment that veil is lifted. And maybe it's like truly one of those moments that you go, holy cow, maybe I'm in a relationship that has not been serving me for X amount of months or years. Maybe I have this, patterning within my professional climate, whatever it looks like, that mirror moment where you gain awareness. While it can be such a blessing moving forward, I've seen and heard so many themes of it bringing a lot of shame and this immediate recoiling of like, I should have known better. I should have left earlier. I can't believe I was so stupid and not seeing, whatever. What are some of the things that you use to combat that feeling so that instead you move forward with more awareness in a positive way and not sitting there looking backwards and like punishing yourself over and over for not choosing differently earlier? Yeah.
Well, and it's really shadow work, right? It's framing it up in your mind to recognize the dark night of the soul can happen repeatedly for each shadow that you begin to work through. And a lot of shadow work can be it can be triggered. Shadow work really organically happens and kicks off and starts the whole process all on its own. But once you're sort of embroiled in it, you understand that it comes in waves, and the awareness that you're talking about, the lifting of the veil, like we have no control over that. So knowing that the information that we're seeking, the awareness that we're looking for, the clarity that we're so desperately trying to find from this struggle is coming. We just have to be open, patient, and wait for it. And it'll, and it's resting in that space and trusting.
Mhm.
And it's, in the early stages of awakening, you're like literally a fish out of water, flapping around and flailing. And that's where I kind of like to come in and not rescue people. I call it a search and rescue mission. I say I'm no longer recruiting, it's a search and rescue. So many times, I can't even imagine what it must have been like to awaken before the internet and social media, even when there was technology, it's just such a way for us to connect and relate that what we're experiencing is not that abnormal.
Yeah, it's such a human experience that is either not spoken about or wasn't spoken about previously, or there's now so much misinformation or very like deliberate, this is what you need to do. And what I've learned is everyone's experience is so different that when you're in that space of sitting and waiting and in that dark night of the soul, and you would give anything in the world for someone to like hand you an answer. But what it sounds like your work often does is like, I will sit with you in this. The answer is going to come, but I'm not going to walk in and say, here's the blueprint, here's the exact map out, because that's not the point. I mean, the point is often being willing to sit in that space and allow ourselves to process, allow some of those answers to come. And I think that it can be so unfortunate if somebody stumbles across a creator that believes this is the exact answer. And of course it comes with this really high ticket. If you pay me this amount of money, I will get you out of here. And then it's like, that may just lead to a deeper, darker, dark night of the soul, because the whole point is often be with yourself, sit with yourself, be willing to be uncomfortable, and then be willing to believe there's another reality that can exist on the other side of this. And yet often we will choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven. We'll go right back into these patterns. And, it's heartbreaking. I think there's moments that I feel like I'm late to the game, or maybe the ship took off without me. And then when I really pause and look around at how many people, I don't know if they'll ever stop and get to know themselves and have awareness in some of the ways that I've really tried to do and expose myself to. And again, everyone arrives on their own timing, but I just think that getting to know ourselves is the greatest gift we can give ourselves and then everyone around us.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, it's learning to love yourself. That's ultimately what we're here for, is to learn how to weed through all of the negativity, all of the pain and the disruption and the trauma. It's all serving a purpose. And it's very hard to see because of that veil that it is actually doing that. And so where we are on these different pages, like I said, something that I say to you may seem so far-fetched, but yet the next person, and it is what happens. I mean, if you look through the comments of my post, one person will say, you're off your rocker, lady, and the next one will say, you just changed my entire life. And that's just where we are. And it's just, it's exciting to watch, but what I try to tell everybody is, you're not late to the game. There is no late. There's no late. You're right where you're supposed to be, and just being present and open to receiving what is being delivered to you in each and every moment is how you don't miss it. That's how you don't.
Yeah, my last conversation that I had with embodiment and feminine energy expert, Capricia Richards, that was the whole title and the whole premise of our conversation. And it was so divinely timed, because I'm in a point in life where so many things are amazing, but then so many things don't look the way I thought they might. Or I had this vision in my mind of like, I'd be done having kids at 25. Well, I'm close to 10 years beyond that and haven't started having children yet. And so I think that there's often our greatest fear and our deepest desire is intertwined. And so it is that shadow that's going to come up in the moments where I'm being invited maybe to a higher timeline. That shadow is going to say, but what if you don't get anything that you actually want? What if it's all, what if this is all actually happening to you, not for you? What if there's this like sneaky little monster behind the scenes that's making sure all these things you desire never come forth? And I've wrestled with that so much lately, in trying really hard to release that and instead like trust so deeply in where I am, and also just recognize I really only am where I am. So all the worrying in the world is not going to make me go back a decade and start a family. Well, you know, all these things like that are out of our control. And that for me has been such a looped lesson I keep learning, is just try to release control and trust and be. And that's where so much magic happens versus like white knuckle force wield, you know, make it happen in this way. It's like we aren't in control in those ways, and we have to really accept that.
Yeah, I think like you were saying with the creators out there that are trying, you know, I mean, I probably even have a tip sheet on how to manifest, but you know, it is a hot trend right now, but it really is something that revealed itself to me to be something that, as much as they tell you that you can't control it, it was proven to me. I had to relinquish and surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Truly surrender.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you do that, and it's not like in the grand scheme of everything, it's literally in every single moment, in every single situation, it's in every single relationship. It's being mindful in each moment so that you're able to allow yourself to surrender. That's where the trust comes from. And that's where you rest in that space. And it wasn't until I realized that and honestly saw the benefit and what that transformed into, built upon my trust and then built upon my trust. And so what I try to tell people is to go back and take inventory of things that you prayed for 10 years ago, things that you tried to manifest, that you put on your vision board. I don't care if it was, you know, a tiny little thing like a new bicycle, whatever it was, take stock of what you have now. And you don't need to show appreciation, you know, to win extra credit. It's to show the appreciation because that builds the trust inside of you to then move you to the next level.
Yeah, like find the things that feel easy, and everyone has them. Like, oh yeah, and my easy things to manifest and to create in my 3D could be the exact thing that the person next to me has just been hoping and praying and vying for so long. But when we find those things that are almost kind of like, oh yeah, like that'll happen, it comes and goes, it flows, figuring out like what is that feeling and how can we create that feeling around some of those other things that now we've created block after block after block. You know, when a relationship ends, it's like for me, another one bites the dust. And here it's almost proving to my subconscious that I'm not going to find long-term partnership. And how do I unblock and unpattern some of those things in order to then create space for the right things to flow and come in, and not just have history keep repeating itself and almost be this like sick self-fulfilling prophecy where I'm living the same loop over and over. But yeah, I think everyone has those inventory moments that we can apply then to some of these other things. And then, like you said, in every moment, practice, because it's not one choice. And now the universe opens. It's, I'm going to test you in every moment that those doubts come into your mind and say, are you willing to trust and release that? Which I think is kind of the ticket and like the secret that isn't really a secret, because so much of it is releasing, you know?
Yeah. It's releasing the attachment that you have to the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've spoken a little bit too in regards to manifesting, that kind of like the number one mistake you see people make is trying to manifest. Can you speak a little bit on that, like trying, you know, side of it?
Well, you know, I think that, you know, part of the lifting of my veil, the realizations that I've had is that, you know, you always hear people say it's out there. You just have to align yourself with it. It's out there. It's out there. It's literally out there. You just have to find it. I know that it's very hard to articulate the concept, but it's something that I believe we've already created for ourselves, and we've created every possible scenario for ourselves. So if we thought it, it exists, and it's now like a thread that we can take. And so the life experiences, the choices, the free will that we truly have, you know, we've got a million paths, these threads in front of us that we can choose from, and energetically we just veer towards the one that we're aligning with. But when you become mindful to your feelings inside and the intuition that's truly guiding your ship, and you start to really be able to tune in and tap into that feeling and kind of scratch it, then you're able to find the right thread, so to speak.
Yeah, align more like intentionally. And I mean, I can't deny there are these days where I know I'm in alignment, and it's almost those moments of like, no way, no way. Holy cow.
Yes.
All these things start to just open and unfold. And I think as human beings, there's this, again, ingrained, maybe self-preservative, like, well, that was really cool, but there's no way that things are that aligned. And it's more safe to just go back and play it small and say, like, we're all just floating around on this giant rock and nothing is a miracle. When in all reality, the energy that we create within and then in turn, send outward does define so much of what ends up happening. And those days that I wake up and it's just that right side of the bed and things are just clicking and aligning, and I think about somebody and then run into them, and all these synchronicities that for me, I'm really personally trying to lean toward even more, because it just keeps showing my subconscious, like, there's so much that's connected. And as you said, you already have everything you're worried that you're not going to have, but are you willing to release your current path to actually align with that path that brings you to everything that you could have ever wanted? And that can be a scary thing when we've just done the same thing every single day and lived this Groundhog's Day over and over. We do have to be willing to make things look a little bit different if we're going to have a different outcome.
Sure, for sure. And just taking this leap away from my career path,
Mm-hmm.
I had to convince my family that I was sane and that this was truly a call that I had inside, and I knew that I had to answer it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the success that I'm experiencing is simply because I held myself back for so long. And once I let that door open, it was like I just came flowing out, and I felt so free to finally be myself. And it's, and I feel like I'm finally aligned with my path.
Oh, I love to hear that. I mean, it's something that, to me, a lot of people don't even give themselves the gift of experiencing. It's this silencing of that inner voice, pushing down the intuition, and then waking up in a life that every single day feels like the wrong life. And the amount of people that I speak to, I mean, it brings emotion to me, because there's no greater gift than being able to wake up and just be in your body and speak your truth and align with people that are also doing the hard thing and doing the brave thing. And to think about how many people, it's not even like, oh, I lived a few days like this. It's, I lived an entire lifetime silencing the inner voice and just doing what everyone else wanted me to do, or I thought they wanted me to do. And what that does to dim someone's light, that we all have these like beautiful bright lights within us, and you can feel it, you can sense it when someone's living authentically and they're chasing passion and they're also believing in others. For me, I think it's a superpower to be able to celebrate other people's success, especially as women. We're trained to go head to head with one another and compete. And if she has what I have, I must be bad or wrong. And it's like such a beautiful thing to connect with people that want to clap for you and cheer for you when things are going right, and not just bask in the darkness when, you're heartbroken and grief stricken and whatever. It's a really, really beautiful, needed energy in our world, especially right now with so much happening politically and so much happening within our nation and division. It's like, if we could create this tiny army of women that just want to support, I mean, it's like, yeah, yeah.
But that was the conversation I was having with somebody earlier today about social media. I feel like it really has only come to this head in the last 4 years, where we've got this ability to influence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying sway people's opinions. It's influence the shift. Influence that perspective shift within all of us, because we all want to be that woman. We all want to be the cheerleader for each other, but we've built these walls up, and we think we're supposed to, hate one another because of each other's successes, when in fact, if we just supported, that would just help facilitate our own success. And so if we can try to influence in that regard, to help women shift outside of that day-to-day mundane, unconscious living. And I think that's what social media is really doing for people right now. And I think that's what's propelling this change, this women's movement, which I love so much.
I do too. And I think that there's such an opportunity to, as everything in our 3D world that we experience, there's such a way to create social media as a positive influence in our life. And with that comes setting boundaries and making sure that we're checking in with ourselves and we're not just numbing and sitting there scrolling. I mean, the amount of times I'm having a day and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm watching cows be born. Like, what am I doing? You know, my algorithm shifts and I'm like,
Right?
what weird niche TikTok thread am I on now? And so again, getting honest with myself in that, but then simultaneously kind of being the change. I mean, there's often a side of like, what gives me the right? And unless I have an audience of 1 billion people, I have no right to be, you know, speaking in this way or influencing in this way. And I've just learned time and time again, like, and I always say, how do you change the world? One person at a time. And that is it. It is not having to have this giant reach. And think about the people that have a giant reach that are very irresponsible with that platform. I mean, at the end of the day, if I can talk to one person and allow them to feel a tiny bit less alone, or help them recognize that we are all living a very similar human experience, then that is the goal that will also raise my vibration. It doesn't have to be reach 1 million people every single day. In fact, that would be overwhelming. You know, sometimes it is just those like actual connections that matter the most. And we lose sight of that sometimes in the social media world, that maybe somebody does have a giant following, but like if their car broke down on the side of the road, do they have people in their real 3D world that they've fostered those relationships with that they could call and say, can you help me out? I mean, your followers probably aren't going to be there. So
Right.
it's so important to strengthen that relationship too.
Well, and I can tell you what, I have 500,000 followers and I still have that feeling that runs through my head before I hit post every single time. What gives me the right to talk?
Mhm.
And I combat that by hitting post
Yeah.
every time. And I just, that's how I train my confidence, because if I don't push myself, nobody else is going to force me to push post.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and I think it's so helpful too to speak to you because of the reach that you have, because all it does is solidify for myself and everyone listening that we're all the same. I could have 2 followers and be like, oh, I'm freaked out about posting this, and you can have 500,000, and we still have that inner critic. At the end of the day, like, our biggest motivation has to be intrinsic, and it has to be that like I believe in this and I'm aligned with this. And a lot of my corporate experience was defied by that in ways where I'm in sales, maybe for a company that I don't really believe in anymore at this point, and I'm actually not aligned with the things that I'm saying we can do and these different things. And so to walk away from that and start from scratch, but say, I believe in what I'm doing and I believe in what I'm saying, people can sniff that out from a mile away. They can tell when you're authentic, and they can tell when you're just trying to go viral or, reach a certain amount of people. And so I think that it's really helpful to hear that your experience is the exact same as mine, and we are years apart when it comes to content creation and years apart when it comes to our reach, and yet we're all still living this exact same human experience and imposter syndrome and self-doubt. It's very connective.
that's the only reason I'm able to do what I do, because I have the biggest case of anxiety of anyone that I know. And it was the realization, the lifting of the veil. Part of it was realizing that we are all one, like truly,
Mhm.
we are all the same. And every single person that has success in life has that success simply because they did it in spite of the fear. And when that really struck me, when it finally digested,
Mhm.
is what catapulted me to stop living behind the fear, because we all have it. It's all in front of our face. We
Yeah.
have to push it aside, but we're so afraid to, because we don't. So I just like to tell people it's safe on the other side. You got to push past it. You got it.
You have to. And it really is. I mean, the only way to face the fear is to face the fear. And while safety sometimes can feel better in the moment, I think choosing safety ends up creating that life where you chose the safe thing over and over and over, and in turn silenced the passion and the voice and the intuition. And again, wake up in a life that doesn't feel like yours. And for anyone listening that feels like you're there, like, now is the best time to start. I don't think that we are ever in a place that it is unrecoverable, or we can't make small changes to kind of come back home to ourselves. And the minute that you decide you want to is the perfect time to make a change and to start. And I think we all feel behind in ways. We all have those moments where it's like, man, my life might not look exactly how it did when I was playing MASH in elementary school and I was supposed to live in a mansion with this many kids, whatever. There's all these things that I think are, again, so connective, because we just have to be brave enough to admit to each other that, like, I may look like I have it all together, but I'm just like you. And we're all so much more alike than we are different. And that to me is the movement that creates massive change because we're brave enough to speak those fears out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And I use the Kardashians as an example a lot to people because, they have what appears to be phenomenal success in life. I think they're, billionaires hundreds of times over collectively.
Mm-hmm.
But the money flows to them because they've never had it any other way, right? They've never had to worry. They've never had to stress. They're not attached to it. It's just always flowed to them. But tell me how successful they've been in love.
Right.
Where, somebody like me, I'm very blessed. I've always had, I've had my share, but I've always been surrounded by love, and so that hasn't been something that I've pined for and cried for and looked for. And it's just perspective. It's shifting your perspective to see, that it really anything is attainable. It's just all about the shift.
Yeah. And I do think that oftentimes when we look at people's lives and their highlight reel and what they're choosing, especially with large platforms to share, it's so easy to like, well, that must be nice. You can just have, any service on speed dial and you have all the money in the world to fly wherever you want private and all these things. But exactly to your point, even using the Kardashians, the amount of anxiety and like agoraphobia and internal turmoil it feels like, and that's even just what's shown on a TV show. I mean, all the moments in between where there's this reality of the grass is not always greener. And also, I would not wish that life for myself for all the money in the world. I think that like there is a blessing in being able to go to the grocery store looking like I just crawled out from under a bridge and not have to worry about paparazzi. Like I am thankful for that all the time. And so to think about the world already having so much pressure, it's like, holy cow. I mean, I will make an impact, but I'm going to be intentional about what that impact looks like because I love my privacy and I don't need to live a life that is shown on a TV show and, exploited to the world. And yet the areas in their life that have always come easy do continue to just flow and come easy. And that can be a good positive takeaway on how we can create some of that abundance in our own lives.
Absolutely. Everything is a lesson.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of to your point on the love aspect of it, for anyone that's listening, and I mean, admittedly myself too, what are some ways that if that is an area that has felt difficult or has felt like it hasn't fully been abundant and come to fruition, that somebody could call more love into their life and alignment when it comes to romantic partnership, platonic love, whatever it may be, if that's a struggle, are there things that you kind of work with people on in that regard?
Yeah, it's definitely the reflection to see every toxic relationship has served a purpose in your life, and it's to really identify what that lesson is. Has there been a common thread? And shadow work helps with that. And there's a lot of tools and resources available for people to sort of walk through, the traumas, because toxic relationships are traumas. So to walk yourself through each of those traumas to really figure out, is there a thread? Is there a common denominator? Is it me? And usually it is. So, but in all honesty, to get anything that we want in life, we've got to give it. So I tell people, even if it's not in a romantic capacity, find somebody to go out and love unconditionally. Find somebody to go out and help and show love and be patient, because that's the recipe, and it will come to you when it's your time. But I've had so many friends in my life that don't put themselves out there, and that's to each their own. But I told them, you don't have to go out and actively date. Go out and join. Go out and help, just help. Go out and give service to another, and the universe will provide. I promise you. And it's that yin yang, and it's a really real thing.
I think that's such amazing advice, because something I've seen a lot, especially relationally in TikTok, social media, it's be unbothered, don't show that you care, be chaste. If you're a super empathetic, maybe a anxious, attached, leaning woman, you've got to learn how to like control that and give less, be the black cat that is being chased around, all of these things. And it's so hard because that feels so misaligned from my truest nature, which is hold the door open, smile at everyone, give love, help the person that can't give you anything in return, because it just feels so good to spread that love and kindness. And so I felt inauthentic at times consuming some of the information I have, because it's telling me basically like, don't be yourself, and also withhold this beautiful gift that you possess of being able to just share love and show love so organically. And so to have that perspective of everything you choose to put out into the universe, you're going to continue to receive back. So if you put out cold, unbothered, harsh, I don't care, you may receive some of that or attract the wrong types of partners. Whereas if you're intentional about it and you're also in tune with yourself and check in with, how do I feel? And am I safe in this experience? And if I am maybe talking to somebody on a romantic level, you don't have to just pour all the buckets of love onto them right away. We can still be intentional about it. But what other areas of our life that are safe can we show love and then call love in return?
Yeah. I think that, in terms of the finding what makes you happy, finding what brings you joy in life, and not worrying about, and it's easier said than done, but I think when you dedicate and you focus on working on yourself and put that aside for just a hot second, it just will happen for you. It's letting go of the control. You can sign up for every dating site, but you're going to continue to get the same person over and over until you learn whatever it is that these people are trying to teach you. These are lessons that we set for ourselves, so we can only be mad at ourselves in life. But, really, the best recipe is to get to know yourself and to focus all of your attention on yourself and really learning to love yourself. And then everybody will love you because you love yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that with that, there's such an authenticity that comes along with it, because if we truly are pouring into the things that bring us joy, getting to know ourselves, dating ourselves first, spreading love in these vessels and areas of our life that really do bring us joy, that's so authentic. And then on the flip side of that, there's almost this like distract and fill your life with all of these things just so you can't focus on the thing that maybe you want. And that's something else that, to your point of kind of like the trying really hard, that's still forcing and not fully just relinquishing and releasing and allowing. It's like still trying to like have our hand in the pot, when really it's like, how can you step backwards, release your fists, like unclench that white knuckle, and instead fill your life with all these things that bring you joy and true happiness and peace, and then allow the rest of your reality to just keep kind of following suit.
Yeah, I mean, the more you really become in tune with your center and your core, then you don't, it's not that you're necessarily laying on your back saying, okay, give me whatever you're going to give me, universe, and I'm just willing to accept it. It's that you develop that ability to discern what is the right way and what is not the right way for what you're trying to accomplish in this situation, in this moment. And it's minute by minute, second by second, situation by situation.
Yeah.
So the more you practice those things and really learn to trust your inner voice, it becomes a lot easier to find where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, definitely. I know you have kind of an interesting current backstory with your grandmother's house. I would love to hear a little bit about that and kind of that current environment that you're in and what type of healing and growth it's brought you to step into that space.
Yeah, I did. I actually just posted some content, I think last weekend. I had an opportunity to go to a family graduation party for a side of my family that we haven't really, we have a very, very large family. And so when my grandmother passed away, when I was very young, 3 years old, and I think 2.5, the family sort of divided over it. And as a lot of times happens. And so the house was sold. And so my one side of the family lived across the street from her. And so I had a chance to go back and visit with them last week, and I hadn't been back there in years. And the house was empty across the street, sitting bank owned. So I said to my family, what's happening with the house across the street? And they said, it's bank owned. I don't know. And I said, oh my goodness. And so we went over and looked in the windows. Yeah. And I've just never experienced the flood of memories that I didn't even know that I had. I mean, truly, I have flashes of my grandmother. And unfortunately, she died very tragically. And so it really left a lot of trauma in my family because it divided my mother and her siblings. And, that just left a lot of bad energy. And I think a lot of what my childhood was shaped was because of that. And
Mhm.
so when I had the opportunity to go and look in the windows and I saw these things kind of flashing in my mind, I immediately said, if this house is something that I can acquire, I'm going to try to get it back. And really, as a gift from my mother, of course, but we've had through the years since she passed a lot of experiences where we think she's been around. My brother, he's about 4 years younger than me. When I was 9, he was 5. He was hit by a car. He was walking to school, and he was hit by a car. And it happened to be the morning of my mother's sister's funeral.
Wow.
So she was getting ready for the funeral. My brother and I were outside. He was going to the bus stop. I was going to the neighbors, and he was hit by a car. He was hit so fast and so hard. His body was thrown. The paint from the vehicle was embedded on his jacket. He landed on his head, but he walked away without a scratch on him.
Wow.
And so when we heard the screech in the road, my mother and I we ran down to the road and we both met in the middle. And there was a woman holding my brother, and she was crying. And my brother was kind of limp in her arms. And she said, "Here, Mom, I think he wants you." And so she handed my brother to my mother, and she took me by the hand. And she said, "Come on inside with me. We have to go call somebody." And I had never seen this woman before in my life. And so she's leading me up to my mom's house, walking in the door, and I look up and she's got tears coming down her face. And she picked up the phone. She dialed my aunt's phone number, and she said, tell her your mom's going to be late for the funeral. Okay. And then I never saw her again. And my mom said that nobody saw her. The police came, interviewed everybody. There were people walking that morning, saw the whole thing. They said there was no woman. My mother and I were the only ones, and we lived in a very small town where everybody knew everybody, so it wouldn't have been like it was a stranger out for a morning jog.
Right.
And it was really fascinating, and we've always correlated it to my grandmother. She was actually hit and killed by a car
Okay.
about 6 years prior to that.
Mhm.
So it was definitely a moment that stuck with us. There's lots more to that story, but yeah. So I really do feel like my grandmother has always sort of been there as a guide to me. And when I looked in the windows last week and I saw the wallpaper in the bathroom, the house was completely untouched from when my mother lived there, which is mind-boggling to me.
Mhm.
It all came back. The feelings, all the feelings, all the emotions, and so yeah, I really do feel like I don't need to get the house. I think it would be really cool if I could get the house, but I don't think I'm going to get the house. But it definitely opened a door to conversations with my mother, and it's going to help facilitate more conversations with my family. And I think we can together kind of open those old wounds through that experience.
Yeah, it's so remarkable what a physical space can hold energetically, and it sounds like such a positive flood of emotions, and again, memories that probably wouldn't have been sparked in that kind of like limbic emotional side of your brain, except for when you do, see the wallpaper, or maybe there's a certain scent, or my grandmother uses Noxzema, so like that certain like skin cream smell at times, it's like I am a little girl in her bathroom
Right
of her home and right there. And I think that often that can be such a gift. And sometimes it's painful people will avoid certain songs, certain scents, certain places because of how much it can bring up. But I also always feel like those memories can be reclaimed in a positive way, and we can use it as a tool and a vessel for healing. And if we're brave enough and willing to allow our feelings to take us back there for a moment, we can change the outcome or change the energy surrounding this very painful experience. And so it's really cool to hear about your current experience in that and being able to kind of reclaim some of that, heal some of that generationally, have those conversations. I mean, it's just, yeah. And so unexpected probably that you just walked
it just takes one to wake up in the family, and to start feeling. And there, we had a lot of years where we didn't lose anybody. We had a huge family. We didn't lose anybody. And then in the last 3 years, we've lost, just so many of our family members. And I think it's really bringing us together in a way now that will allow us to really kind of work through some of those feelings and emotions. So I'm hopeful, and I see some light as a result, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Is there anything with where you're at now in this healing journey and process, but looking back, that you would either share with former versions of yourself or share as insight to people that maybe are listening and are just not quite as far along on the path that you are?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, it's all an evolution. It's all a self-evolution. So really, what I'm learning even as a parent is I can tell you as much as I can tell you, but it's really the experience. So being open to accepting that even though it feels like magic and woo-woo and things that we really don't feel like we should believe in, it's all very real, and it's all self-directed. It's all self-directed. So
Yeah.
when you recognize that you are the captain of your own ship, truly, truly, is when things start to shift for you. And so being open to touching that side of yourself that you're afraid to touch. Just do it, scratch it.
Yeah.
And then come.
Yeah, absolutely. Along those same lines, you've spoken about kind of training your courage. Can you speak on that a little bit for anyone listening?
Yeah, definitely. The whole concept is to just do it in spite of the fear. And so the more you allow yourself to do that, and sometimes it takes those self-pep talks. Sometimes it takes listening to that music to like psych yourself up. Whatever tools and resources that work for you, you've got to go press the play button, because I can't do it for you. You're not going to do it for me. And it's great to have support in your life, but you got to be your own wingman. You got to be your own wingwoman, and you've got to make yourself do it. So recognizing that everybody has fear is step one, and step two is just taking that step in spite of it, and knowing that you've got a whole world of people that are doing the exact same thing. And even if the outcome is not, or the outcome is what you feared, it's still you doing it and allowing yourself to do it in spite of the fear. That builds that confidence within yourself to then do it again next time. And the next time it won't be as bad as the first time.
Yeah. And the outcomes will show us that it wasn't ever about the outcome. It was about doing the thing. And then how many people you talk to that are like, I started this business and then it pivoted here and then it pivoted here. And if you would have told me a decade ago, this is what I'd be doing, I would never have believed you. But it's just like you said, pressing play, taking the first step, doing that first move, doing it scared, doing it anyway. That sets the people that actually do it apart from the people that never do. And everyone has those dreams and those magnetic pulls within them. And the only difference is the people that quiet their inner world to listen and ask what it's telling us, and then take the first step. And that first step we may think is leading us down one path, and it's leading us down something we could never have even imagined in our own minds, which is a really beautiful but also scary notion.
Absolutely. It really is. It is scary. It's very scary, and it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be scary. And the reward comes from doing it and realizing that it wasn't actually that scary.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Last question for you here is what your kind of personal version of red nail energy is. And so that can be something that's physical, like putting the lipstick on or whatever it may be, but also it could be an inner practice that just is the thing that helps you do it scared, helps you press post, whatever it may be for you personally.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because I'm a maid of honor in a wedding this weekend, or else I would have done the red nails, but the bride poo-pooed it. So I did don my red earrings.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people to, and this is what works for me, is get yourself in a mindset that you feel like, conjure it up, like how when you feel like you look the best, you're walking in, you're confident, you're prepared, like do all those things for yourself. Like I was saying, put the music on, and that is what I do. Genuinely, and really with my content too, is I try to make it authentic. So if I watch it back and it doesn't look like I'm talking to somebody that I personally know, I re-record the whole gosh darn thing, and I just do it until it feels right. So it's kind of like the same thing in life, I guess. You can't. There's no dress rehearsal. You got to just do it, but it's not going to be perfect right out of the gate. And just giving yourself that grace.
I love it. Yeah, it's so crazy how a small shift, like I can be just feeling kind of blah, and everything in me is just inviting me to stay in this kind of gross, low vibration energy. And then it's like a flip of a switch where like you put the hype song on, or you shake your limbs out and you're like, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to release this energy. It's all up to us. And like, we get to control the energy that we bring into any room we go into. And what a powerful thing to recognize that and to know it's not happening to me. Like, I'm happening to the world and it is happening for me. And I get to determine, like, you know, if I'm going to walk into the room with my head held high, or if I'm going to round my shoulders and try to hide from making eye contact with anyone. And we hold the power internally for both outcomes. And so, not that it's always perfect. I have days that I'm like, today is a day that I stay in my sweats on my couch with my dog, and I don't want to conjure up the high vibration. And then there's the times that it's like, this is where I am. And am I going to go into this setting and allow it to just take me and consume me? Or am I going to walk in and say, I have the ability to command the energy of this room in whatever way I choose, and I'm going to wield my powers accordingly. You
just have to do it. You have to become what it is that you want to become, and the world will adjust. And that is the truth.
Yeah. Yes. More of that, and more people being brave enough to be exactly who they are, because that is what this world needs right now more than anything else.
100% agree.
Is there any last quote, piece of advice, anything intuitive that comes up for you that you would like to leave our listeners with before we close?
You know, I encourage everybody to just start sharing their story. Just start talking. Like you said, you don't need 500,000 followers. Your people will come, and maybe it'll be 3,000 and maybe it'll be 3, but those are the people that are meant for you. So, I encourage people to start talking, and it definitely will allow for some healing and light in their life.
Yeah.
That you didn't expect.
Yes. Thank you for that. I would agree and co-sign that. And just even start with your inner circle and be brave enough to be witnessed by those around you for your imperfections and for the things that make you human. Because I can guarantee you the person on the receiving end of that is going to go, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one. Thank you for giving me permission to be human and imperfect as well.
Taking your light and lighting theirs. And even though you feel as though you're only, impacting one, it's tiny of us to think that that's not transcending, because it is. It's transcending to every other nuance that person is touching. So
yes, definitely. And then for all of our listeners, if they would like to find you, follow your content, work with you directly, what is the best way for them to do so?
My website is www.jenniferhargis.com.
Awesome. Amazing. I will link that in the show notes for anyone listening. And I just appreciate you so much, Jen. This has been such a great conversation. My mind is spinning with more ideas and questions. I'd love to have you back. And just, this world needs more of you. And to all of our listeners, this world needs more of you as well. You are seen and loved, never alone. And we will catch you next week.